Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. It's time for another Transformers review, and we're taking a look at one of the Dinobots. We have here before us the Autobot Flamethrower, Slag. Now, Slag, like the rest of the Dinobots, was released in 1985. He would also be available in 1986. He would be discontinued in 1987, and we would not get a replacement for him. Slag, of course, was among the first three Dinobots to be released. He would be released alongside Grimlock and Sludge, with Snarl and Swoop coming out later in the year. Now, Sludge was technically had the function of Flamethrower. He should have been the only one of the Dinobots that could breathe fire. However, in the cartoon, it appeared that all of them had that ability, so it tended to reduce Slag's overall usefulness to the Autobots, as what makes you so special if everybody else on your team can do the same thing. Of course, Slag was also more famous for his bad attitude, as Slag really didn't respect anybody beyond Grimlock, and even that was a stretch, as seen during their famous debate in the animated movie, when they were stuck on Quintesson. At any rate, let's take a look at Slag's articulation, and he had about what you would expect for a Transformer around that time. We could rotate his arm at the shoulders. He could rotate the arm straight up, and it could go back about that far due to the fact that the dinosaur head tends to get in the way. Now, while he could extend out at the hips, there is no articulation at the hip, but he can bend his legs at the knees. But that's more, again, to transform him than it is for any posable purpose. And you just saw the missile fell out. Again, the launchers were neutered for the American release, so they just hold, if that. Alright, let's go ahead and transform Slag, since he's already throwing his weapons away. We'll start by removing all of his accessories. Now, to transform Slag, of course, the first thing we do is we got to take his chest shield here and fold it up over his face. And of course, some of you astute viewers might notice as well that this portion here of his chest can be lowered and opened. This is from his original Japanese toy origins, where this would be a cockpit. In Japan, the toy line was released as a powered mecha, sort of similar to the vehicles that we would see in Robotech or Gundam. And this is just a throwback to that. Hasbro didn't bother having that removed. But that's just so you know why it's there. And next, we're going to take his fists and we're going to push them inside. You can push them in from the edge, or there is a little lever right here on the inside of the forearm that you can use to push his hands all the way through. And next, we're going to go back here onto his backside. We're going to kind of straighten out the tail a bit, and we're going to fold his legs back at the knees, one at a time. Carefully guiding them around his tail until they kind of lock into place. And then we just push them inwards together. After we get his tail down, then you can push them in together and line the tail up along the backside. Then next we're going to take it back here to the dinosaur legs. We're going to fold the back legs down, like so. And we'll stand him up and then fold his ribs down. Well, just the horns there. And there we have it. Slag's alternate mode is, of course, a Triceratops. So it seems kind of fitting that he was the one that bickered the most with Grimlock, as most dinosaur media does seem to depict that the Triceratops and the Tyrannosaurus were often enemies with each other. Whether, of course, that's true or not, I don't know, but then again, who really does? And of course, for articulation, you can, of course, reach down here and open the mouth to simulate fire breathing. The front legs do rotate, so you get a decent range of motion there. The back legs also rotate at the hip. But as you also saw, they also bend at the knee. And of course, if you want, you can stick the tail out a little bit further or keep it inward. It's entirely your choice. But also, the red plastic horns do also move. There's no real need to move them, but they are on there pretty loosely, so they will move with little to no effort. Especially for a toy that's 35 plus years old, like this one is here. This one is the one from my childhood, so yeah, he looks a little worse for the wear, but he was the only Dinobot I had, so that's why he looks a little worse for the wear. He went on a lot of adventures. Now let's take a look here at Slag's accessories, starting with his rocket launcher. Of course, his launcher is referred to as a rocket pod, since unlike most of them that come with the Dinobots, his is shoulder mounted. This little piece here at the bottom is on a hinge, so with some effort you can rotate it around to the opposite side, so you can plug it into either the right or the left shoulder, whichever you prefer. So this makes Slag one of the few Dinobots that can hold all of his accessories. I believe the only other one that can hold all of his weapons is Swoop, and that's with him holding one of the launchers in reserve on his wings. This is Slag's rocket pod. A nice little detail. And of course, what's a rocket pod without some rockets? Slag has 3 of these silver chromed rockets. They aren't anything fancy, as you can pretty well see here. As you can see the whole thing here. Not much to look at. And then we have his sword, which the instructions label as a Energo sword. Which, according to the lore, the blade would be made out of energon. And in a lot of ways, the sword pretty much functions almost like a lightsaber from Star Wars. An interesting little bit of trivia is that on the original Japanese releases for these guys, before they were Transformers, these swords here were chrome, like all the weapon accessories were. Why Hasbro decided to make them all out of red plastic is hard to say, but just an interesting bit of trivia for you. And then lastly, we have Slag's gun, which is described on the instructions as an electron blaster. It's a pretty small gun. So it looks a little small on him compared to a lot of the other Dinobots, but given the fact that he doesn't really have much room for his fists, it is appropriate. Now we'll take a look here at Slag's instructions. Let's see here, they don't even bother listing the type of dinosaur, just Slag dinosaur. But of course, at that point, this was well before Jurassic Park. All kids knew what dinosaurs were. Really simple transformation, just seems more complicated by the way that his tail gets in the way. And of course here we put on all the stickers. And you get here to find the rub sign, save your robot points, and of course clip the tech specs. So, speaking of the tech spec, we got it right here. It's all done up in red to show that he's an Autobot. It lists him as a Dinobot. And of course, this picture here would have been used on the front of the box. It gives his name as Slag, and his function is flamethrower. Of course, a flamethrower is normally referred to for a weapon that shoots out flames. It basically has a fuel canister mounted on the usually on the bottom, or in some larger units as a backpack mounted unit that keeps an open flame at the end of the barrel, and a concussive burst of air, as well as shooting out the fluids, causes it to shoot out a cone of flames. Of course, one of the best uses of a flamethrower was, of course, the 1986 movie Aliens. But a flamethrower is also a role in the military, as usually a specially trained soldier is used to operate a flamethrower, as that person is usually also somebody that's a valid target, since if somebody takes a shot at the fuel canisters, it's likely to set the person on fire. Very dangerous position. But at least it's better than the later attempt by Hasbro in their G.I. Joe line, when they put out the Ice Cream Soldier as a flamethrower commando, which makes no sense at all, nor did the fact that the Ice Cream Soldier's weapon consisted of a rocket launcher mounted onto a flamethrower, which makes even less sense. Anyway, Slag's motto is, I have no need for friends, even less for enemies. Enjoys melting enemies into pools of liquid metal. Like his fellow Dinobots, resents authority. Disruptive, often brawls with comrades. Shoots 3,000 degrees centigrade flame up to 80 feet from mouth. Enormous strength, can shatter a brick building with head. Uses Electron Blaster in Dinobot mode. Rash, not too bright. Nasty, mean-spirited, often the other Autobots won't help when he's in trouble. But of course, how strong the Dinobots were, them getting into trouble usually didn't amount to much. At any rate, let's take a look at his stats when we lay the decoder over it. It gives his strength as 9, his intelligence is 4, his speed is 3, his endurance is 9, his rank is 4, his courage is 7, his firepower is 8, and his skill is 7. So he's really only got deficiencies in intelligence and speed. Otherwise, you've got a very powerful soldier here. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Slag? Slag is definitely one of the more interesting characters. In the cartoon, he did obviously carry over his dislike for authority and his tendency to brawl with others. As he often, but in cartoon's case, more often than not, his brawls were directed at Grimlock. Sort of giving the impression that Slag didn't even respect Grimlock as a leader, much less Optimus Prime. But Slag could be counted on to handle the Decepticons. As we saw in the animated movie, he was the one that knocked down Devastator during the Dinobots' initial attack. And of course, it's implied that Slag was the one that busted the Dinobots in to the Quintesson courtroom, with him giving off the best line in the movie by looking down at the guy and going, "Excuse me." The toy itself, it's not bad. It could stand to be a little bit better, but for its time, it wasn't bad. It certainly was a nice rendition of a Triceratops. It certainly had the look of what a robotic one certainly would look like. So we'll definitely give them some points on that. The articulation on it, it could be better, but we could also say it could be a lot worse, too. So we definitely shouldn't judge it too harshly here. All in all, in the long term, I'm going to definitely put Slag in the middle tier. He falls a little short of being in the top tier, which is where I'd really like to put him. But a lot of that goes away with the fact that his exclusive function was taken away from him in the cartoon. All the Dinobots could breathe fire for some reason, and that sort of diminishes his role as the flamethrower of the team. But he does earn a lot of points for being a well-sculpted figure, and he is one of the few Dinobots that can hold all of his weapons. So he definitely deserves some credit for that. And that, of course, concludes my review of the 1985 Autobot Flamethrower Slag. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you liked it, please drop me a thumbs up here on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below to join our ranks. And ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Also, please share your thoughts about Slag in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying, alright guys, what are we having for Thanksgiving here? Beryllium bologna. Boom, boom, boom. Scythium salmon. Beryllium bologna. Scythium salmon. Cut it out, you turkeys.